If not, at least report it. All right, my friends. We are up to part 2 of our mini series on Mikvah, Mikvah, mysticism, and money, or something like that. I'm not sure what the 3 M's. Put in whichever order you want. For some people, it's about money, the mysticism, then the Mikvah. For some people, it's about the Mikvah, the money, and the mysticism. Okay. So in the previous year, right, this is how usually the TV series starts off previously on. And then I realized I keep referencing shows that no one else knows. But no, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or is that after your time? Or
It is after my time, but that motif.
Oh, okay, the motif, you get it. Okay. Okay, very good. So just as a reminder, if you find yourself missing our Igros Moshe Shirim over the course of Yontif, you can go on to a nice little website called Tradition Online, and they happen to have 30 plus articles on Rav Moshe Feinstein already written, which may or may not be almost the same material you're going to be seeing over here. But as I like to point out, my editor is very good at streamlining things, so there may be 1 or 2 ha'aros that didn't make it into the publication that you will get specially over here. So exclusive package deal. Okay, so we talked about mikvos last time. Moshe Feinstein on mikvos, particularly in the context of a Chever Kadisha that wanted to incorporate, a funeral chapel that wanted to incorporate a mikvah because some people had this special chumrah of, they didn't want to suffice with just the buckets of water. They wanted to dunk into a mikvah itself. They thought it was holier. And while it sounds harmless, essentially what it was going to do was it was going to raise the cost of funerals. Because if some people want to be noheg, this chumrah, this stringency, it eventually becomes a standard for everybody. Or at very least, look, the chapel is going to have to defray the cost of maintenance for the mikvah one way or another. So who knows? Maybe if you don't choose the deluxe package, you still might wind up finding the cost of Jewish burial going up in price. And this goes very strikingly against the entire principle that Rav Gamliel himself established that we should be able to afford to die as Jews. And we'll talk about at the end of, hey, why can't we just afford to live as Jews also? That's not a bad idea either. Why wait till death? So for those who are looking in the handouts, by the way, speaking of handouts, I came by a wonderful little thing that I didn't bring it with me, but it says in Rishume Aaron, I have these thin little 2-volume set, Rav Aaron Felder's notes, his Rishimos from Rav Moshe Feinstein Shiurim. And I saw a note today, I'm just going through basically the way I do the research for the classes many times is that I just collect data. I look through these books and I bookmark and things that look interesting to me. And then eventually I have to sit, the most annoying part is I have to sit at my screen in front of a computer and then log everything into different categories. So then when I'm I want to do something on mikvah, or I want to do something on education, then I could pull it all together. So anyway, in case you're wondering, looking under the hood of how these things get done. So anyway, I noticed that he said Rav Moshe Feinstein was opposed to just constantly printing out handouts and then putting them in Shemus. Which I thought related a lot to the shiur we did 2 times ago, our series on Shemus, but also it gave me a good excuse. Because if I ever am feeling a little bit lazy and don't want to give handouts for a shiur, I can say it's not me being lazy. I'm just being very from. Rav Moshe Feinstein doesn't want handouts for one-time use. So I have that going for me. I'm keeping that in my back pocket for a rainy day. There's a few sources like that up in my back pocket. There's a Minchas Chinuch, I think it's on Toin V'Nitzan, if I'm not mistaken, on the claims in court. And he says, I would elaborate on this, but it would take a very long time, and we don't have time for this. It's found throughout all the pages of the Talmud. So next time someone asks me a question, I don't really know what to say. Now the Minchas Chinuch could actually elaborate on it, to be clear. But if I wanted to just keep that source in my back pocket, I would answer it, but it spans pages of the entire Talmud, and we don't have time to get into that over here. So these are things I keep in my arsenal. Anyway, what I was interested is that what's behind this whole discussion about adding a mikvah to the funeral process is really a stream of mysticism that's pushing for it. And what I wanted to understand was Ramosha Feinstein's position, taking a step back and a little bit of a bird's eye view, what were his attitudes towards mysticism in general, mysticism in the halachic process, and to practitioners of that, particularly in the Hasidic world. So if you look over here, we'll start off with a fun one. This is on page 4, Os Yud, in Mesoras Moshe. Just reminding ourselves that Mesoras Moshe is Ramosha Feinstein's grandson, Rabbi Mordechai Tendler, who spent, I think, the last 8 or so years of his life with him. They just came out with a 5th volume of Mesoras Moshe. And when I talked to him, he said apparently there's a manuscript for the 6th volume as well. And these are thick volumes. They're like 600 pages or something each. They're like huge tomes. So that was what I was, while Talia came home and was watching an episode of Paw Patrol, I was able to sit on the couch and just put all my bookmarks in all the interesting things. You know one interesting thing I found today? I think we talked about him in a previous year. The Gesher HaChaim, Ramichal Tukachinsky. So the Gesher HaChaim is the authoritative work on Hilchos Avos, on the laws of mourning. And basically, Rav Tukachinsky, if you ever go to Tzom Gedalia, Ma'izmanim, and you'll see it says that according to Ramichal Tukachinsky, the fast ends at this time. According to Moshe Feinstein, there's this and that, right? So it looks like Moshe Feinstein and Ramichal Tukachinsky, from a superficial standpoint, are are butting heads. They're from separate worlds altogether. But the truth is, apparently, according to the Mesoras Moshe, Ramosha highly praised the Gesher HaChaim by Rav Tukachinsky, and even purportedly used it when he himself was in Avelos. He read through the Gesher HaChaim. So just to show you, how highly he held of him, which is not a surprise because he got along with everybody, and anyone he did not get along with was because they didn't get along with him, probably, as we'll see soon. So Ube'inyan Gaiva, Bevadai Shehi Yoser Gura Mehana. So we know that arrogance is Osiyon on page 4. Arrogance is really bad. So this is part of a piece where he's explaining that you shouldn't withhold yourself from teaching Torah and publishing, because even though there's a sense of arrogance in that, mitoch shalolishma balishma, from a perhaps a not ideal intention, there could be a pure intention that one rises to. I put this in the introduction to the upcoming Moshe Pirkei Avos, because you had to do that perfunctory humility. We're like, who am I to be publishing this, blah, blah, blah. But then I found over here Mesoras Moshe that was mutter for me to do it. So I quoted this at the beginning. Umishu hiskir shachasidim kornuzeh gaiva de kedusha. That apparently the Hasidim have coined this term, holy arrogance. The Heishu Rabbeinu shezeh shtus. Dein kedusha bazeh. This is shtus. It's silliness. There's no holiness in arrogance. Right? Now, you shouldn't stop yourself from publishing Torah because maybe you feel a little bit gaivadik, a little bit arrogant doing so. But don't fool yourself into now it's holy work. It's gaivadik kedusha. It's holy arrogance. This is a classic Hasidic maneuver where they'll take something that is ostensibly prohibited. They won't just justify it, but they'll go ahead and they'll even say, it's a mitzvah. I'll give you a classic example, not a classic example, but an example of it. The Munkacher Rebbe, the Minchas Uluzer, so he not only justifies not singing in the Sukkot Shmini Atzeres, but he turns into a mitzvah, saying, "Who are you to hide from?" Right. So 7 is the natural order, and then 8 is Ma'ala Min HaTeva. 8 is above the natural order. So Shmini Atzeres, the 8th day of Sukkot, or whatever it is, the appendix to it. It represents the Achor Sayamim, the end of days, in which God's glory will be fully revealed for all to see. So if you're going to be hiding in your huts away from a society, it shows a lack of bitachon and faith in God. So he took what was basically usher, and then he said not only said mutter, is it permissible, but it's a mitzvah to do so. And I could give other examples with dancing on Shabbos and Yontif and others, but we'll save that for another year. All right, so that's source number 1. Now, if I gave you this source out of context, it would sound like Ramosha Feinstein was the biggest Litvak ever. Now, he was a bit of a Litvak. When I say Litvak, by the way, means Lithuanian, but that generally means like the cold-hearted Russia yeshiva. Did I tell you guys a story about the Litvak, the Breslover Chassid, and the Lubavitcher Chassid who go to Gehenna? Did I tell you that one yet? All right, so So I'm not a what? Yeah, they go to a bar in Gehenna.
Explosion in the bar.
Yeah, they went to the bar and then they were sent to Gehenna. Let's go with that. So, so I'm not exactly the biggest neo Chassid person, in case you haven't figured it out. But someone sent me this story that Rabbi Moshe Weinberger shared, and it's probably the one and only time you'll hear me quote Moshe Weinberger. I mean, he's a lovely man. It's just not my cup of tea. But it's probably the one and only time you'll hear me quote him in a shir. It was a really good joke. So. A Lubavitcher Chassid goes to Gehenna, a Breslover Chassid goes to Gehenna, and a Litvak goes to Gehenna. So the Breslover Rabbi Nachman, the Breslover Rebbe, comes down and he sees his Chassid wallowing in hell and says to him, I see, you danced around and sang Rabbi Nachman and you had your nice big kippah and payas, whatever, takes it by the payas, pulls him out of Gehenna, brings him to heaven. Beautiful. Then comes Lubavitcher Rebbe. He sees Lubavitcher Chassid who's wallowing there in hell. And he says to the Lubavitcher Chassid, okay, you learned your chitas, you got someone to shake lulav and esrog one time on this tree, you put tefillin on somebody, great, pulls him out of Gehenna and takes him to heaven afterwards. They go to heaven, they go to Gan Eden. Then the Litvak's Rosh Yeshiva comes down, takes one look at him indignantly and says, you see, I told you so. That's the I remember when I was in Stanford, there was this guy, Reb Yossi. He went to Chaim Berlin, I think, and he was well, the only guy who went to Chaim Berlin who wound up in Stanford. So we'd always yeshiva sprach with each other. So he said, I told this to one woman at shul, and her response was, I don't get it. Why is the rabbi so mean? So anyway, I'm trying to maybe some of you were thinking that. So anyway, that's just how it goes. So anyway, that's the stereotype of the cold-hearted Litvak. So that's what you might think. But what's interesting actually is we have to go to Moshe Feinstein's biography to appreciate this. So this next source is from Man Malchi Rabbanan. It's from the biography at the beginning of the 8th volume of Igros Moshe. And it tells us that his father, Reb David, right? So he had a son, Reb David, that was named after his father, who of course had passed away at that point. So Reb David, he studied at the yeshiva of Volozhin, and he was makpid on all the different customs of the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon was the arch nemesis of the Baal Shem Tov and the Hasidic movement. It doesn't mean the Vilna Gaon didn't believe in any form of mysticism, by the way. I mean, he had some interesting things. But anyway, he was always following the Gra. Now, here's what's interesting about their backstory. Apparently, let's see, is this the source? I'm saying it by memory over here. He followed all the different minhagim of the Gra, and apparently what happened was that they were kicked out of their shtetl for a little bit. There was a pogrom, so the Feinsteins fled, and when they came back, they noticed that a new rabbi had, welcome Karmit, a new rabbi had taken over the shul in his absence. So rather than start a machlokas and start a fight, what they decided to do was they would go dominate the other shul in town. So it was a Hasidic shtibel. And over there, that's where Moshe kind of learned about all of these different minhagim of the Hasidim. He had some Hasisha yichas himself. But his father was always makbid. So what do we say after Kabbalah Shabbos on Friday night over here? After I speak? Very good. Bamem Balikin. So what do they say in Nusach Sfard? Gegavna. So he's like, we're going to daven the Nusach Sfard, but we're not going to say Kegavna. We're still going to say Bamem Alikin. He felt strongly about that. There's a tshuva. It's not. I don't know if I put it on the sheet over here, but Rav Moshe says about his father that his father opposed singing the stanza of Barchuni L'Shalom. Anyone know what's wrong with Barchuni L'Shalom? Very good. You're asking the angels to bless you, and this is perfect for this time of year because of what prayer? That we say in Slichos, that is potentially problematic. Rabbi Wiener, you should just give the shir already at this. Very good. So there's a prayer. It's a good song, actually. Machni Seirach. It's a great song, but bad theology, unfortunately. Oh, we got someone at the door. Come on in, Sandy. Welcome in. Right? So in Machni Seirachimim, we're basically asking the angels to bring our prayers up to God. Now, some people say, they're just a conduit. Well, does anyone know what the Rambam says at the beginning of Hilchos Avodas Kochavim, the laws of idolatry? Does anyone ever wonder that we started off in the world and there was Adam and Chava and Cain and Hevel didn't exactly work out with them? But everyone, despite people sinning with the tree of knowledge, despite the sins of murder and all that, they knew that there was God. God, after all, conversed with them. So how did paganism, how did polytheism ever enter the world if we kind of knew that there was always one God? How did things change? Anyone ever wonder that? Does anyone know the answer? So the Rambam tells us. Oh, yeah, sorry, David, what are you going to say?
I read the chapter a long time
Oh, so tell us.
So what Rambam says is that, you know what? People would say, God is too big, God is too powerful for us to approach him directly. But the sun and the moon, those we can see, maybe let's go and ask them to intercede on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And then further and further down the line until they forgot where the top of the chain was.
Very good. So David tells us what the Rambam describes. At the beginning, everyone worshiped God and like, oh, God's a busy guy. He's very busy with running the world. He's a CEO after all. So maybe we go to like one of his officers. It seems that all these celestial beings up there seem to be very chashiv. They seem to be very of high stature. After all, God put them up there, so maybe we should pray to this celestial being and that celestial being as a way to get to God. And at a certain point, the celestial intermediaries became the main show. And at a certain point, we basically forgot about God altogether. And that's how we got idolatry, according to the Rambam. So you can imagine that we might be a little bit sensitive to praying to angels. And I even are going to say the angels, we're not praying to the angels, we're asking them just to bring our prayers to God. That's kind of how idolatry started. And it goes down a very dangerous road. So that's what we try to avoid.
Not everybody agrees with the Rambam on that.
Oh, yeah, on a lot of Rambam's theology. Welcome to Judaism. That's how it goes. Okay. Now let me ask another question, my friends. What nusach? How many people here daven nusach Ashkenaz by raise of hands? All right. Anyone daven nusach Sfard? All right. Which one is the original? Between the two of them.
Ashkenaz is older.
Oh, it's Sfard or okay. It's very good. So Sfard, really?
No, I believe nusach Ashkenaz is older.
Which one's more legit, guys? Ashkenaz or Sfard?
I think that.
Yeah. Which?
Something fake.
All right, so let me tell you what I'm sorry, for some reason, there's always like a lot of dust in this room. It gets my house. So Ramosha says, if you look at Osiad Bays, so first of all, just to allay any concerns, he says, look, whatever nusach you daven at the end of the day, it's going to be kosher. I remember when we had a Sephardic, there still is presumably one, a Sephardic meeting back in Stanford. And so some Sephardim in the community, like they would only show up to shul when there was that Sephardic minyan taking place. At one point, it was like once a month or something, or every other week. Now I think it's every week. So what happened was this Sephardic gentleman seemed rather like a secular Israeli, I think, kind of shows up, and he realized, he comes in, he's like, where's the Sephardic minyan? We say, oh, it's not on this week. So he like already was past the threshold of the door of the shul, turns around, starts leaving. And then I remember Rabbi Cohen, the senior rabbi, he's like, oh, don't worry. This is just as legitimate. We're all davening to the same God. He was, I don't know if he was successful in convincing him to come to the regular minyan that the main Ashkenazic minyan that we had. But, sometimes people, they get all in a huff and a puff about my nusach. So Moshe says, look, in the end of the day, all the nuschos that we have are going to work. Yesh l'chol nusach makor akol teva v'teva. Bain al pian nigla, bain al pian nistar, right? Very, very PC over here, right? Very diplomatic of him. Sounds like a really good politician, but sounds like a good, like what a true politician would have said. Mayor, you're going to say something? Okay, but take a look at the next tshuva. The next tshuva is about a young man. This young man goes to yeshiva, and he notices that at yeshiva they're davening nusach Ashkenaz, and he thinks to himself, wait a minute. My father davens nusach Sfard. My Zayda davens nusach Sfard. My Zayda, my great grandfather davens nusach Sfard. So wait a minute, am I breaking the family minhag, the minhag hamishpacha, by davening nusach Ashkenaz? And we will do this as a future shiur. Ramosha Feinstein on the sugya of minhagim and customs is immense. It may very well be like the final shiur we ever do because it's going to require a lot of research on my end to put it all together. But what does he answer? Look in the bold over here on Osea Gimel, page 5. V'nimsa she'ein lahashav shinoi minhag masha ischalta lispal nusach Ashkenaz. This is not considered you veering from your family minhag by beginning to daven nusach Ashkenaz. Even though some of your father and a few generations earlier began davening this new nusach svard, shahare adarabba. On the contrary, hein shinu minhag avoseim v'avoseinu adirei olam chachmei tzarfas Ashkenaz. They were the ones who veered from the tradition. Ashkenaz, nusach Ashkenaz, preceded Nusach Svard. Nusach Svard, my understanding is that it's essentially Nusach Ashkenaz, but they took some of the mystical elements that they're like looking at, like, the Arizal, looking over at what those other people were davening over there, and they want to incorporate some of that mystical element into the davening. Which this is why it's all the rage in more Hasidic circles, because Hasidim are more into that mysticism stuff. I don't study Hasidus, but my basic understanding is that that's what they're into. Yeah, this is Sephardi, not Sephardi, by the way. This is different.
Right. So if you're in the Middle East, like Iraq, and you get in and all that other.
Yeah, Eidut HaMizrach is something else. Different book. Eidut HaMizrach is like its own thing.
Okay.
This is Nusach Svard. It's like you'll go to many shuls, which the people look, sorry, stereotype. They look Ashkenazi, but they're davening as Svard. Like you'll see that, and like you'll even go and like they'll just like have gartels. Like you'll see more gartels there probably. Like people who have Hasidic yichus will probably have that.
Family of this brother. His father died when he was too young. The discussion discovered he was brother.
Oh, okay.
He switched.
There's a schism, I think. I think there's like Bubba 50 something or another, which basically like there's a Bubba on like that street in Brooklyn, and so they're like, I was always wondering like they have like a number or something to them. It sounded like like Blink 50, no, whatever. Okay, I don't know, I forget the numbers. Blink 182. So, okay, I'm not sure why I thought it was a 50 something.
So when we became more observant, he chose to get this book.
Makes sense.
And
Now, the truth is, I looked into my own yichus, and we have a family heirloom called the Sakan Aron from my great. I forgot. I have to count how many greats there are. I think it's 2 or 3 greats. Grandfather of Aaron Yosef Kurtz. So he was a Hasidic fellow, and I was looking at the biography, and but apparently he said in the biography over there that he was friends with Moshe Feinstein after they moved to the Lower East Side, and Moshe was a big fan of his agadic prowess. So I'm yet to inherit it, but I'm working on it. Anyway.
I know there's also with filling, you do Ashkenaz or Sfarad, and that's different.
Right. So I wrap it in Nusach Sfarad. Right. So I actually wrap it that style. Yeah. So there's certain. My father chose it for me.
So my father did Ashkenaz. My older brother did Ashkenaz. For some reason, when my bar mitzvah came along, he decided I was going to do Sfarad because that was more the yeshivas and the.
As long as you have Rashi tefillin, you're good to go. Which we'll be talking about, God willing.
When my kids got pregnant, I decided to change and continue with my father's side. That's why I did it for my family.
As long as the parshias are ordered according to Rashi, you're fulfilling the mitzvah one way or another. So if it's ordered a different way, like Rabbeinu Tam or the other Rishonim, then you got questions.
Reversed gear.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So anyway, so just to go further in the tshuva, but he says nonetheless, al kol panim, top next column. We're not going to start, going ahead and like persecuting everybody who's becoming Nusach Svard. I assume there's got to be some reason that they thought it was okay to do this. He's being very charitable. But I'm just saying, if you want to go ahead and daven Nusach Ashkenaz, that is actually the Masorah, the tradition of our fathers and rabbis. You definitely have permission to do it because you are not breaking your tradition. You are returning back to your tradition. Right? So that's and this brings us to what is for the time of year will be the most important source that we look at for the evening. because it talks about, we just began at Matzei Shabbos, Slichos. Now, there is this thing you may see that some synagogues will do called an early Slichos at night. So let's just give a little bit of background over here. We do it after Chatzos, after halachic midnight, because it is at that point, it is a good Eis Ratzon. It is a time that we are told mystically is good for tefillah. Beforehand, not good for getting our tefillahs through. We'll talk about davening early in the morning as well. So I still remember I got in some trouble back when I was, a young and loose-tongued assistant rabbi. I still have loose tongue, but even more loose tongue. So the way it got split up was the senior rabbi went to the earlier slichos at 10 o'clock, and I went to the traditional standard slichos after chatzos. And it wasn't just simply it was earlier, but they also had a guy with a guitar, and like it was. So the way I announced it, which to me, I mean, I'm not even talking about that. I think in general, I think it's perverse, honestly, the whole guitar for slichos. It just makes no sense. The point of the slichos, it's like you're supposed to be in contrition, and like to bring like a guitar in. I'm like, not everything has to be happy, okay? It's okay if we have some serious emotions from time to time. Also, you could do the kumtzitz before slichos. That's okay. I went to the Strings of Hope thing. We had our kumtzitz, so to speak, there before slichos. Fine. There's a lot of time between Ma'ariv and slichos to do whatever you want. But anyway, so the way I announced it was I said there will be standard traditional slichos at 12:58 a.m. and there'll be sing-along slichos at 10 p.m. To which some people in the show leadership were not happy with me for saying that. So all right, so anyway, but then it got me curious. I'm like, maybe I should maybe before I just open up my mouth next time, I should take a look at the actual halachos. And Baruch Hashem, I was vindicated. But anyway, so here you go. This is asked by Rev. Ephraim Berman. I was told he was the rabbi in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, which is apparently at least back then in the 1960s, but still is not exactly the most lovely, safe place. At least back then.
My dad has a medical office there.
1960. So at nighttime, was it safe to walk around, or?
When he would close up his office at 5 or whatever, the local police station would send a cop to walk with him.
Well, there you go. Good. So this is.
Bugging for the drugs in his-
All right. Well, I'm glad you're basically confirming the background that we need for this. Kini bedavar amiras slichos b'makom sheyireim laleches b'shamu cheres b'layla im rashayin lomar izashos mikodem chatzos. The question is, we live in a place where people fear for their lives. Is it mutter for us to push up slichos earlier so people don't need to be out on the streets at that ungodly hour? So notice the whole famous tshuva that everyone points about Ramosha saying they have slichos early. Already, it's important to look at the original tshuva because he's talking about a case not where people are simply tired, but where people actually are afraid for their own safety to go out at night to go to slichos. So this isn't just because people wanted to get to bed already. I mean, I definitely having a healthy night's sleep and all that's important, but these are two different things. So he says, now, why do we wait till after midnight, halachically? It's because at that time we are told, look at the Magin Avram over there, it is an Eis Ratzon. It's a time that is fortuitous, that is conducive for davening to Hashem. In Cain, Habetzibur Beis HaKnesses Eis Ratzon La'olam. Right? So we know that this is a good time to daven slichos. Now look at the next paragraph. Hare chazinon shle'inya minak deslichos Losagi Beis Ratzon, the Tzibur Beis HaKnesses Beis Ratzon, that Seres Mei Tshuva, El Tzar Gam Eis Ratzon, Mitarat Zman Shel Halayla Shumechatzot L'Halan. So he says, we can see that there's a big benefit, not just because the prayers themselves are going to be powerful at this time of year, but we want to ensure that they're getting through to God in the most effective way possible, so we're going to do them after halachic midnight. Now, nonetheless, he says, under these circumstances, there makes sense that we could be flexible. Look at the bottom paragraph on page 5. This is important for our purposes. It So, if it's impossible to get a minyan together for slichos after chatzos, I'm going to keep using the term chatzos. That's halachic midnight. Bisbatlu also had sibor mislichos, and people are just not going to get together down with slichos at all. Yesh lahater begeter horas shah. I am going to permit it as a one-time exigent circumstance. Elahemi, right? Gamit chila ki bedvarim elu. Because let's think for a moment. While it's all nice to daven after chatzos, what's the basis for this of davening sichos after chatzos? Where does it say I have to do that? Ki bedvarim elu ein makor mi gemara. There's no Talmudic source for this. It comes from more recent rabbis who made this determination based on mystical literature. Shemistaber, turning the page, she'ein bezet inyan iser. And while, okay, it's nice, mystical literature is all fine and dandy, he doesn't have any principled objection to the genre of Kabbalah, but he says that's not going to create a formal halachic stricture. So, and like worst case scenario, if you daven slichos at 10 p.m., okay, well, no harm, no foul. Worst thing, it was just a regular tefillah. Maybe it didn't, whatever that means, get as high up there, I don't know, climb as many rungs as your tefillah after chatzos would have. But is it really going to kill anybody? Like, I mean, like, you could just be on your couch watching reruns of The Apprentice, or you could be at shul davening slichos. So there's there's worse things you can do with your time essentially. I rediscovered it because Layla was sick one day, and I was like, what, I couldn't be productive or anything. I was just like holding her the whole time. So I go into Amazon Prime and I saw it there. I was like, I've heard this mentioned a bunch of times. And then I've watched it a few episodes since. Anyway, so you see, I waste my time here and there as well. So he said, I knew you would approve. Anyway, they're actually okay. I found a stira between what it said in there versus the current policies, but that'll be for another shear. I was like, I want to like write ha'aros. I'm like, oh, this is a steer to what he says today, and this compliments what he said. I could have come out, it's like doing the Ramosha Feinstein parish in Perkiyevos. I said maybe the follow up could have been, in the 5 towns if you sell. Okay, I'm gonna get a lot of trouble. Never mind. Okay, forget it. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. Next paragraph. So he says, but here's what's interesting also. Ramosha Feinstein gets pegged as, Ramosha permitted the 10 p.m. slichos. Even when you're doing it earlier, he says, you should try to get it at the 1/3 mark in tonight. So just skip to the bottom of that paragraph in Cain, who bekan erech tesvav o eser minutin. Minutin, you know what that is? Minutes, very good. Acher haschos sha yud aleph lahashos shalata birenu v'haviz shav arba minutin be'erech kodem chatzos. So this is basically like 11:20 p.m. So even Ramosha, who's like pushing it earlier, he's saying, okay, don't do 12:58 a.m. in the morning, but maybe try to get it like 11:20 p.m. instead. So that's still a far cry from the 10 p.m. Though my sense is that he would permit the 10 p.m. also on this basis. And then
really only saying 11:20 because he missed the average.
Well, basically, like there's different. There's something called the ashmores, which are like the guards during the night, and I think it corresponds to what they did in the temple. That they had different shifts. So, and like basically, like kabbalistically, we understand that those times there's like changing of the guard, and our prayers are more effective. And it's still not exactly clear to me the mechanics of it. I don't think it's clear to anybody. But he's saying is at least aim for that ashmores. And then in the final paragraph, or second to final paragraph, he writes, the Motzei Shabbos. Now, why might it be an issue to daven beforehand? Well, maybe it's prohibited on Motzei Shabbos to start davening confessions and petitionary prayers until halachic midnight. And he notes that the Ari was very makka on this, right? We'd hear Lurianic Kabbalah. So he says, but big deal. Eno Isser Medina. It's not halacha. In fact, I didn't put it on the sheet, I think. I did put it on the sheet. This is an addition I put in later, I believe. Yes. Take a look at Os Tesvav. Good. I updated the sheet since the first time I gave it. This source, I embarrassingly omitted it from the article, so it'll have to appear in the book in the future, God willing. But this source is super important. Look at Os Tesvav, last source on page 6. Now, we've been talking about Kabbalah as a singular category, but the realm of Jewish mysticism is not unitary. One could buy into one form of Kabbalah, not the other form of Kabbalah. So check this out. Hine pashat sha Kabbalah tachriya hu sefer hazor vatikudim shem divrei tanaim. There's an idea, the Mishnah Berurah, many others believe, that if you have a debate in halacha, right, you have a halachic source versus a Kabbalistic source, the halachic source wins. But if I have two halachic sources that have equal merit to them and are at a standstill, they're at a deadlock, a Kabbalistic source can kind of tip the scales in favor of in one direction. But where do we say that? When it comes from the Zohar or the related literature. He assumes that the Zohar, by the way, is Tannaitic in origin. Yes, I know some of you are raising your eyebrows here. Aval Kisvei Hari, I'm not sure what the next one is over there. Anyone have to look back the... Yeah, is that something Spaneach? I have to, I'm not sure. But clearly also a later Sefer. Af Shagadol Ma'od, even though he's like, don't worry, look, I think the Ari is awesome and everything. I'm not telling you otherwise. Who ke'echa mikola poskin shoshain lacho kalav. He's no better than any other major rabbi from his time. And we could argue on him, af b'divrei Kabbalah, even on mystical matters. V'lo lanu yasme de yasme lomar mi gadol me. Like, it's not me, you know. I made this game one time as a joke. There's this game I grew up with called Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering. The basic principle is, you know, you have like weaker creatures and you sacrifice them to get stronger creatures, and then you attack the opponent with them. So I wanted to make a card game of that with, like, you know, Rosh Yeshiva. And I was like, you know, but then it required you to like rank Rosh Yeshiva power levels. So I was like, for Purim one time, I kind of like, I made like Rev Rosenzweig, Rev Willing, and Rev Herschel Schechter as like the 3 Egyptian god cards in the game, which are like the 3 best cards from second generation. And it's somewhere on my Facebook. If you go back to like Purim from like 3 years ago or something. So anyway, he's like, but we can't do rabbi power rankings. So, you know, like the Ari basically is no better than any other rabbi living in his time. So, ain't var machrin yoser mikol rabo seino. Like, very nice, Mr. Rabbi Arizal, but that's a very nice opinion. Get in line with the rest of the rabbis, basically. So this is an important point. Now look back at that other tshuva. We say, the Ari says you have to wait till after Chatzos to daven slichos. He says, big whoop. Okay, you know, like we love the Ari, but we love all of our rabbis, and that's not going to make a difference in my psak over here. So this is interesting. Rav Moshe Feinstein seems to kind of just dismiss the Ari and say, very nice. You know, and so here's the thing. One might walk away with the impression that Rav Moshe was not a big fan of Kabbalah. I would argue, even though this is a case where my bias kind of got challenged. Like, I was really hoping he would come down hard and just say, all this Kabbalah stuff is made up, whatever, and just move on. But I have to be honest in my research that it did not land where I was hoping it would land. Every now and then I have to do that. If I don't do that, then I'm not being honest. So the truth is a little bit more nuanced. Rav Moshe did not oppose Kabbalah. He opposed it having significant influence on halacha. But he valued it as a genre unto itself. He just wanted to protect halacha from being cross-contaminated from it, if you will, from blias. So, and here are the sources. I'm not just making it up. Here are the sources that informed my understanding. Let's get a reader who would like to be our laner for today. On page 7, we got a little bit of English. This comes from the Sefer Maaseh Moshe. Who would like to be our reader? Women could be Balei Kriya here also, by the way. Yeah, Lee, go for it. Page 7, the English there. Nittelnacht.
Nittelnacht. Rav Moshe learned in a regular fashion on Nittelnacht. So instructed his yeshivot and talmidim.
Let's pause right there for a moment. So Nittelnacht is basically Christmas Eve. And Hasidim and those who are mystically inclined, they won't learn Torah on Nittel Nacht. They'll play chess or do something else, play a board game, because apparently if you learn Torah, I don't know, it gives some sort of mystical energy to Jesus or something. It's not really clear to me how it works. The Sitra Achra, whoever it represents. So I always say some people are very makbid on Nittel Nacht every Nacht. Right? So some people Nittel Nacht is every Nacht. They're just they're afraid to give any power to Jesus or anything, so they're just not going to learn any night of the year. So Baruch Hashem, none of you are included in that by virtue of sitting here right now. Okay, and now Kabbalah.
Kabbalah, the other thing about Nilnach is on Christmas Eve, they
Yeah.
used to say that you shouldn't study because if your lights are on, non-Jews will, just to like start a thing.
So that's probably the real origin of it.
But then how would you play chess?
That's a good point. How would you play chess then? Hadra Kushila Duchta. So we're back to where we started. Now, okay, fine. So let's go up to Kabbalah.
Rav Moshe did not speak about his knowledge of Kabbalah. One time, Rav Moshe went to 770 Eastern Parkway, being the Sadr Kedushin. The Lubavitcher Rebbe asked Rav Moshe a specific question on the Zohar, which was bothering him for years. Rav Moshe answered it right away. Several years ago, a Dayan told Rav Moshe's family that for many years, Rav Moshe would go on Thursday nights during the 1940s and 1950s to learn Kabbalah with the Dayan's grandfather, who was a knowledgeable Makubal from Europe and was then living in the Bronx.
All right, so there you have it. This is a report from the family. I think it's I have to check if it's Rav Tendler who edited it or someone I think from the Tendler Mishpacha. But it was at a family. This was put out at a family simcha, so it has their haskama.
I wish we had his notes.
Yeah, that'd be
That
cool.
would be fun.
Yeah, I know. So he didn't really write about it. And the truth is, in Darash Moshe, you don't really see him incorporating Kabbalistic works, to my knowledge. So take a look now. Osir Ches on the same page. Man Malchi Rabbanan. This is the biography. It says that that being Gedolei HaTorah Halitim, amongst the Lithuanian Gedolei Torah, Hayahu Hakaro B'Yoser Al Chasidim. He had the best relationships with the Chasidim. In fact, when we talk about the Satmar Rebbe, why Satmar Rebbe may have not gotten along with Ramosha so well, even though people say that personal relationship was fine. I see conflicting reports on this. But he got along with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Babov. You see? Babov. Get cited right here. It says Babov. There you go. And also the Admorim from Russian and Karlin Stalin, which I always got a kick out of. Karlin Stalin. It's like you basically got Stalin in your name. I feel bad that they wound up with that. I don't know who Karl was, but Karl Stalin. I know. Yeah. Okay. So it's a most unfortunate name that you got associated with Stalin, but they could rebrand if they want to. Just like the Cracker Jack, or what was it, Cracker Jack, or what was that thing that never? What was that whole thing with the rebranding flop that in the
Cracker Barrel.
Cracker Barrel? Thank you, Cracker Barrel. I never heard of Cracker Barrel until the whole controversy broke out. Yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe okay. So I grew up in the Five Towns. You didn't have to. Anyway, and then look at Osietes on page 8. Nonetheless, again, even though he was friends with many Hasidim, he still remember that source in Masoros Moshe we saw where he's like that guy with the Kedusha idea, the holy arrogance is just shtus. So likewise, Shemati mitalma choshev sheshama mirav Chaim Mintz shlita. Rav Chaim Mintz. We've quoted him before. He's the mashgiach in Yeshiva Staten Island. That he said, Kama makoros b'nei achia shiraim yatzak. So this idea of shiraim. Once in my life, I went to a Rebbe's Tish. It's where they have that whole gathering, and they do. I'm not really sure what they do. They do singing, and I'm sure it's a Devar Torah at some point. And then all of a sudden there's peels of fruit coming around, and everyone's sticking their hands in it. And I was like, I don't want to catch any diseases or anything from all all these lots of people touching in this. It's by the way, I don't mean to offend anybody. After we do the whole round with the Torah and I shake everyone's hands, it's too much. I don't like Purell after I touch every doorknob or something. I just feel like I've touched too many hands, not to Purell at that point. So I still like saying hi to everybody. I also just I don't want to get sick.
They
Also.
also, when I went there, they also had a Chaim, and everyone holds their cup up, all the men, and the rabbi looks, and they're sure that every time he looks at one of them, he knows everything about them. They're just,
Wow, they're enamored.
that he sees into their soul. I mean, it was just.
Yeah, the issue is you can't. You can't prove it, you can't disprove it. So it's just like one of those things. But yeah, they got lots of beliefs about them. But okay, they may be true, they may not be true. We'll find out. Teku until Elionavi comes to tell us if we were just being duped the whole time. You can tell where I land on these things. I show my cards. So Ramosha says basically he was presented all these different ideas and the basis for Shiraim of the Rebbe giving out his literally leftovers. He, essentially, you never hear like, oh, does the rabbi bless the food beforehand? It's kind of like that actually. The rabbi essentially blesses the food, hands it out. He's like, there's no raya for this. There's no basis for this. I mean, look, you want to get food from the Rebbe? I mean, have fun with it. Oh, one source, I don't know if I put this on in the end. I think this is going to be a footnote for the book because it didn't make it into the article. But did I put it at the end? Let me just see if sometimes I stick things as an end note. No, I did not add it on here. But basically, Ramosha once lamented toward the end of his life, that they turned me into Hasidic Rebbe. I think Michael Shurkin said, he's like, they treat me like a Hasidic Rebbe, which he remarked one time.
The status.
Yeah, the status and also like the kind of questions people ask, he's like, I don't stare into anybody's soul, it's like, he wasn't into that. Remember our friends from Karlin Stalin were told that all the Karlin Staliners came to they sent a class of kids and they told them go watch Ramosha Feinstein daven and learn from him how to daven. This is a big misnomer, by the way. A lot of people, and then like I've noticed in like the YU world who are into all the neo-Hasidic stuff, they think yeshivish people like don't know how to daven, like they don't daven with kavanah. You like to any like proper yeshivish minyan, like there are people like chuckling and saying things out loud, and like the same kind of kavanah you'll see at a Hasidic place. And there's also been a lot of cultural diffusion as well, I guess, over time. One little thing over here, Oschav, Ramosha said, "Binyan ayin hara, vada yishlachosh ava ein lahak bid harbe." He said, "Okay, there's a thing called the ayin hara, the evil eye. There's some. It is in the Gemara. There is such a concept, but don't lose sleep over it." He said, essentially. Now, here are some responses to Ramosha. I realize I'll try to go to 8:15 and call it a day. So, all right, let's go into I'm going to go to rapid fire mode. If I start making any jokes or digressing, just cut me off, guys. Igros. This is a collection of responses to Ramosha Feinstein. He did a great job collecting them. So, actually, let's skip over that. Go straight to the Monolegros. Have we talked about Monolegros yet? Very briefly. We'll cover in more detail in another shir. There was some guy named the Rav Yontov Schwartz who was very chutzpahdik. He wrote a whole book to just basically dismiss the entire Igros Moshe, but he didn't just do it based on svara, based on logical argumentation. He went full ad hominem on Rav Moshe Feinstein. It was extremely rude, and he got put in a cherem, and the book can only be found on bandsfarm.org or .com or something. I kid you not. So in there, he says about Rav Moshe and Nusach, and Nusach Svard, he says, "V'hevel yifatza pihu." I'd rather not translate that, but let's just say it was very rude. He says Ramosha's argument about Nusach Svard and Nusach Ashkenaz being superior. He's like, we're not trying to like figure out someone's lineage if they're Jewish or not. We don't have to look back all these generations. And he quotes the Divrei Chaim, which is a very well-regarded Hasidic source. So look at him wax poetic. No, all the different minhagim that we have actually is rooted in just like the essence of our souls. And each minhag has its own special path, which is guarded and is ordained by God. Right? That's the explanation. So Nusach Sfard has its way, and this guy has its way. And he says that if somebody doesn't know, then they should follow the Ari. Or Arisal. Also Lashanos Minagavosav. So he's like, actually, if you want to play it safe, you should go with the Arisal, you should go with Nusach Sfard. And so basically it's all based on like these this idea that mysticism should be determining our nusach rather than actual halacha determining our nusach. And then if you look at Chacham Vadi Yosef in Oschav Gimel on page 9, without going through the whole piece in Yechav Das, he says that no, actually, remember Moshe said that if you daven sichos early, what's the big deal? Worst case scenario, it just isn't as potent of a tefillah. He says no, not only is it not helpful to daven beforehand, but it's detrimental to daven slichos before chatzos. He who aces gavrus hadinim. If after chatzos is a good time to pray, before chatzos is a dangerous time to play. V'imsanu masigim matorah hafucha, where you're actually going to. He's quoting the Tshuvos or Moshe Zechus that actually it accomplishes the opposite. And anyone who's involved in the realm of Kabbalah prohibits davening sichos beforehand. So, he's basically going all in on like Kabbalah should be the determinant. And he quotes the Ari, he quotes the Chida, he quotes Rechaim Pelagi. He's pulling out all these Sephardic or Kabbalistic sources. And so basically he takes issue with Ramosha, but again, both the Hasidic world and the Sephardic world are much more predisposed, I would say, to, in principle, incorporating Kabbalah into their Psak Halacha. This is the main difference between Rav Moshe, his Psak, and the Ashkenazic world of Psak, versus the Hasidic world of Psak and the Sephardic world of Psak. The Hasidic world and the Sephardic world didn't just study Kabbalah and hold it in high esteem, but they even believe that it should inform the halachic process. To Moshe Feinstein and to the standard Ashkenazic Yeshiva Shevel, the Lithuanian world, it does not determine the halacha. Halacha will always take priority, particularly when that Kabbalah is from the Arizal or of later origin. Now, what would they say if they found out that the Zohar was also of later origin? It's a great question. Like you could convince one of them that the Zohar was actually just, kind of made up in medieval times and does not go back to the Tana Rishon Bar Yochai. Maybe they haven't. What? It's attributed to him, but I think we assume it's a pseudo-epigraphic that it was falsely attributed to him. Just, it's a great branding strategy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're there. What?
To think there's a way to harmonize them.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. You could say that the essence of the idea somehow are passed down, and then they were smoothed out. Yeah, you could definitely go with that. But okay, not but. And let's conclude with the following ideas. I wanted to come full circle for a moment. So if you remember the way we went down this whole rabbit hole. And we went quite deep down the rabbit hole, I think. We touched on a lot of different issues that were related to this, is that we started with the topic of mikvah and the idea that people wanted to add a mikvah to the funeral chapel to, that way they can have a holier tahara experience. And remember, Moshe's protestation against this was that we're making the funeral process more expensive, which is antithetical to how Jews approach burial. To which I asked the following question. Why is it sufficient to make death affordable? Why can't we make Jewish life affordable? And so I point you to page number 10, a story that Rav Michal Shurkin records in Megagivos Olam. And with this, we will conclude that indeed, there are many examples, honestly, that point to this. I'm just giving you one of them. I just wanted to check this. Okay. That indeed, Ramosha was once asked, not once asked, Ramosha used to go to a particular matzah bakery on the Lower East Side. Then a new matzah bakery popped up and offered a premium package. More chumras, more stringencies, sounding familiar to our mikvah case a little bit. So what does Ramosha do? He says, well, I'd rather make matzah for Pesach with these extra levels of stringency. That way, I could have the most mahuter matzahs, right? We pay a premium for shmur matzah already. May as well get the finest shmur matzah possible. But then, when the day finally came to go purchase matzah and to bake the matzahs, he never made good on it, and he went to the original bakery. And he explained, She'im hu yavor v'yafe b'mafia hashni'ah, if he went to the other bakery, the new one, hakol yasu kamoso, everyone said, I see. And there's a story like this, I think there's different, there's two similar stories, so it's not the one that most people think of. There, Moshe was one time at a meal, and he picked up, it was either milk or orange juice or
something.
yeah, it was something. It was either milk or orange juice. He picks it up, looks at it, and puts it back down. What's wrong with that brand? Or Moshe finds he's not going to drink it. And then they're like, Rabbi, what's wrong with it? It's like, yeah, who knows? So then he says, the bottle was empty. So, but the point is that people are watching and are scrutinizing. Does Moshe do this? Does Moshe do this? So he's very careful. He realizes that it's not just simply him who's going to go to this new bakery, but everyone's going to follow him. So he said, "Kol yasu kamoso, v'yazu gamkin es mafia hayishana." Everyone's going to abandon the original baker. Taharis parnasaso shel harishon, and they're going to basically they're gonna kill the guy financially. They're gonna put him out of business. So notice how in Rav Moshe, this is just one of many stories about where, of course, now look, if this old bakery was simply not kosher, then there's no question. But within the realm of once we're already talking about legitimate options, where Moshe is going to opt for the choice that is going to help Yidden with their parnasa. That's going to help people be able to afford to live a Jewish life. When we eventually talk about the one sink, one dishwasher, one oven combo, which is a future year we'll talk about, that theme will come up there yet again. Because for Rav Moshe, even though we just read that tshuva about mikvos, about making death affordable, for him and his psak, as we'll see time and time again throughout our shiurim, it wasn't just about making dying affordable, but it was about making Jewish life something that we could live as well. And with that, my friends, we go on Bein Hazman and we go on hiatus, and wishing everyone a ksiva v'chasima taiva, a good bench year. We should have a happy, sweet new year. Take care, Karmit. Good to see you.
I won't be able to be here on Wednesday, I'm sorry.
Oh, is it?
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Karmit. Take care.